DJ PK. It's time to welcome in Steve Cleveland, former BYU basketball coach. Steve, good morning.
Morning, fellas.
Steve, why so many slow starts? The question on the lips of thousands of BYU fans. So many bad first half, so many good second halves, and if they're playing a ranked team, they don't quite get over the hump. If they're playing a team that isn't quite that good, they usually do rally and win. But why do people have to watch 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of losing basketball? What's going on?
All right, let's look at some positives here.
Okay.
So, I think I know as a coach, just having that experience for 35 years, there were nights when we got off to slow starts, and it made it very difficult. The one thing about BYU that is a positive thing is that they've come back in games that were looking like blowouts, and they've made them really meaningful games. Unfortunately, whether you lose by 1 or 31, it doesn't matter. Losing is losing, but this team they've got to have better first halves, number one, and number two, they've got to defend in times when it's really needed to get a stop. And I think as I've watched these games, and I'm listen, I coached long enough to know that as a coach, you try a lot of different things, and you try to put yourself in a position where you can win basketball games. But I think the slow starts and then just amazing second halves. But by the time, what happens is that you've got to spend all that energy and go through that whole process, and all of a sudden you've had to get after it, and your legs, you lose a little bit of your legs. You get a situation where teams that you're playing at home or on the road, you've got to be able to be more consistent defensively, I think, and getting stops early on, not getting down big and then fighting back. And there's a lot. This team has a lot of heart, and they're competitive, but they're just putting themselves in holes that it's hard to get out of because you're playing good teams. I mean, you're playing there. They played Arizona close to the 3-point loss. They had to go to Kansas, which we'll talk about in a minute, but for a team that's 14th ranked, boy, they really looked a lot better, and Peterson was the real deal for the half that he played.
I'm wondering, is Kevin Young thinking about or actually saying the words that church leader accused you of saying after you won your first conference title when you were in high school and he called you into his office?
Do we really want to go there?
I'm reading the book.
Hey, listen, first and foremost, I'll let you know I've been to enough practices and watched Kevin and his staff. But listen, it's part of the process. And you do get angry and you do get upset. And I think the thing is that when I had issues like this when I was playing, or not when I was playing, when I was coaching, I felt like the most important thing that I could do was to be honest with them. And if it needed to be said, I said it. I'm always tried to watch my language and try to be as appropriate as I can. But sometimes it just drives you nuts when these things are happening.
It consumes you.
Yeah, and so I just think that you get your group together. I had enough team meetings when guys weren't playing well in a half, or guys hadn't been playing well for 2 or 3 weeks, that you hold the people accountable. And I can't imagine Coach Young, he'll probably start with himself and his staff, is that we need to do a better job. And number two, that, hey, you know what? If AJ's not playing well, or Saunders isn't playing well, or whoever it might be, right? You have to be honest with the guys, because your teammates, if they watch, your teammates watch the best players in a position where they're not acting accountable, or that maybe the coaching staff's not taking the time to make sure everybody knows who's accountable here, then you have problems. I don't think we have that problem. I just think it's time that, Coach Young and his staff have to make it really clear about what it takes to win close games on the road. And I was shocked how good Peterson was. And I'd seen him play a little bit, but he's been hurt so much, it's hard to see him play. And but those were deep threes. And I mean, his stroke was so good and so confident. And the fact that he didn't even play in the second half, has to upset a coaching staff and a team that says he didn't even play the last 20 minutes. And that is something that I would bring the attention. And listen, Coach Young and his staff are outstanding, and I'm absolutely certain they made it very clear that we got to be better in the beginning, and we got to be definitely better at the end.
I'm curious how you see these poor starts. Is it some type of scheme thing they're not ready for? I don't think it's that, but I've wondered. To me, I think it's more an energy and focus problem, and it seems like when they get down, they really get locked in and really go. I don't know why they don't get locked in earlier. How do you see it?
I think there are two things. The coaching staff has a responsibility and a role there. They know that, and I'm sure they've talked about it. I think the other thing is, where is the leadership on this team coming from? And you hear all the naysayers out there, and I don't listen to that junk. But I think right now it's maybe time for a players' meeting. Maybe a time that Richie Saunders, who is the heart and soul of this team and has been in this program for a long time, that he gathers the guys together without the coaches. Maybe not, they don't even know about it. I mean, I did that as a player. I remember as a coach, there were times when the leadership of that team, all of a sudden they're having their own private meeting. And it's not about pointing fingers. It's about we got to be more accountable to each other. And I don't think this is about AJ. In fact, AJ's a young player. He's doing what he needs to be doing. He had a challenging time against Arizona. He wasn't able to hit the three. I think he was 1 for 8. And, but he came back, had 17, 1 and 2, but he only having 1 rebound. And so, but it can't be just about AJ. I mean, yes, I think when your best player is not performing maybe as he'd like, or the coaching staff or the players, it's really important that everybody be accountable, not just an AJ or a Keita or a Saunders, but everyone. And when you start looking at the numbers, you realize that this team, they need their own team meeting. They need to look at each other and talk to each other. And the really good teams that I coached, they were leader-led teams. And that's when you turn a corner here. And I believe that's what they will do. And I think anytime you go through a time where you lose a couple of games, and hey, it's tough. I mean, I had no idea how good some of these teams were. And I think you're looking at, I think they have 6 ranked teams right now in the Big 12. And, you're playing Oklahoma State, but I went through, just looking at the numbers and looking at Oklahoma State and remembering the tradition of Oklahoma State, and you can't look past anybody. And it's got to happen right from the beginning, because the last thing you want to do is go on a road and then all of a sudden get down 10 or 15. And it's just hard to overcome that in the second half when you're on the road. Yes, you can do it at home, but much harder to do it on the road.
I'm wondering if there's any type of strategic moves they can make. And we were discussing, Wright being able to get into the paint so easily, but being smaller. But he's a good shooter too, so he's having a hard time finishing. Maybe move him off the ball a little bit more, put the ball in Saunders' hands, and see, particularly obviously in the first half, and maybe generate some more offense there and free up Wright to take some jump shots instead of trying to score and direct the offense, because that's a heavy load on somebody to carry.
Yeah, it is a heavy load. And he's asked to do a lot of things here, and he's capable of doing it. But I like your thinking there. I remember that there were times in in-game situations where I would something would come to my mind and thinking, what can I do? And I'm sitting there thinking about it, and it's like, maybe taking somebody off the ball. I mean, listen, you can't look at anyone. Wright has been amazing. Yeah. And what he's done for this team. But when guys are struggling a little bit, it's not the time to point fingers. It's time to, what can we do personally? What coach can I have go work out Wright or AJ or Saunders or Boscovich, whomever it might be? I mean, I'm looking at the line there with their bench guys, and I mean, just the 3-point shooting. AJ, I think, was 1 for 3. Saunders was 3 for 7. Wright was 1 for 5. Boscovich was 1 for 4. The three ball is a big part of the game today, and it's been a big part of the success BYU's had. And then when you look at the Kansas game, and you got 90 to 82, but it starts with Peterson going off and making everything he shoots. But then you go back and take a look, and Richie goes 33, 10, and 2, and AJ 17, 1 and 2. But you're three guys that are there and being asked to do it, but there hasn't been a lot of help. There's just not much coming off the bench. Guys get in foul trouble. Maybe a guy needs a break. And so they're going to need to develop their bench. And they're going to need to work with their bench and continue to do those kinds of things, which I know this staff is going to do. But I know as a coach, and for those that are listening that aren't coaches or watching as a fan, that you do have to do different things. And you have to maybe take a guy out of a rotation on a particular game and have him come off the bench. You got to get some confidence. These are really good coaches. I remember being a coach and trying to navigate through getting my guys to get their confidence back. But I like the idea of Richie Saunders, especially bringing his mates together in where coaches aren't involved, where managers aren't involved, and it's talk through those things. That could be so therapeutic, and it can be so good for a team. You're not going to be having team meetings, every 2 or 3 days, but make them meaningful. If it's appropriate, I always like to see my guys just, Coach, we're going to be about a half hour late. We have some things we need to talk about. And if it's Richie and if it's AJ, whoever it might be, but you're looking at guys that have had a lot of success, that can really increase the confidence of this team and get them believing and playing the way that they want to play and the way the coaches want them to play.
This won't help this year's team, but do you think for next year's schedule, the schedule year 2 was much tougher than schedule year 1, but there weren't true road games. There were a lot of neutral site games. Now, I know you got to get somebody else to agree to it, so I don't know if you try to find someone in the Big Ten, maybe Izzo would do it. He seems to get a home and home so you can really feel what it's like to go on the road. Maybe go to Utah State or New Mexico or San Diego State, places that traditionally love to boo BYU, get a hostile environment there, because these guys didn't really play true road games until they got to conference. Now, they did win the first 2 against K-State and Utah, but is that something they should look at going forward? Real road games in November and December, where possible.
Well, I think when I was putting my schedule together, we did initially early on, depending on the team, and if it was a senior laden team, and we wouldn't do as much of this, but I always try to get 2 or 3 or 4 games in that first 11 where I could play younger players, where I could put myself in a position where I could play more players and watch and see what kind of development there was. But when you get to the second part of the early preseason, I always felt it was good to do it. And they played. I'm trying to think their schedule. I know they played UConn. What you guys?
Clemson, Villanova.
What's that schedule?
Wisconsin, Miami, Dayton. I mean, they played some teams where you're thinking, okay, this is a pretty good team, but they're mostly neutral court games. I think they played 5 neutral court games.
Yeah,
maybe 6.
And they're, I mean, I think if you're thinking as a coach, it makes things more equal. You're not playing at a home court advantage. You're playing somewhere where you have a better chance to win a neutral site game than you might on a road. Yeah. I'm talking they're playing good teams and good talent. So I'll just tell you kind of what I did. And I mean, I felt like I needed 3 or 4 games to get guys an opportunity, especially younger players, new to the program. But this team right now is not a young team anymore. I mean, they've played a number of games. And I think I'll go back to the accountability of the players. And where's that leadership? I got to believe Richie is where that heart and soul of that team is. Wright is a leader. He, and I don't know anything about his personality, so I can't speak to that. I'm not at practices right now. But when you're asking me to think about guys that can have an impact on winning day in and day out, certainly Richie and AJ and Wright are the guys that you look to. But who in that staff, like Davis the other night against Arizona, had 15. That's a good number for him. I'm looking at BYU against Kansas. AJ had 17, Caden 9, Davis 2, Saunders 1 off, 6 for 14 3-pointers. Right, the same guys, but there's not a lot of help off that first line of players. And so maybe we're spending time as coaches with individual players, helping them with the 3-ball, helping them with free throws, whatever the needs are. There's some special attention that goes to guys that maybe aren't where they need to be. And this is no time where we're berating players and doing those kinds. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm suggesting is I remember I got more done one-on-one with a young man that it was struggling, and there was no outside influence besides me. And then what you do is with your assistant coaches, I tell them what I've done and what I'm doing, and then let them reinforce that down the road where players feel like, oh, I'm part of this. Coach is taking special time. Hey, listen, when a head coach takes a player, and you can take any of these players here, but let's say that it's not AJ and it's not Saunders and it's not Wright. But look at a guy like Davis who goes 5 for 8 from the 3-point line against Arizona. Then you come back down here again, and he's 1 for 6 from the field goals, 2, 2, and 1. Well, that happens when guys play a little more time, or they're up here or down there. I just believe that accountability is the thing that you have to focus on as players. Number one, if you can get your leadership, the players themselves being a player-led team, you're always going to be better through those experiences. Yes, there are times we get upset and we get angry and we feel like maybe the effort isn't what it needs to be. Hold them accountable. I don't think the effort has been a major issue, but it is at times you watch a team that kind of goes through the motions and they get behind and then they got to fight and come back. And when you're playing in league play, you can't take anybody for granted. I mean, I'm looking at the upcoming games. They got Oklahoma State, and they're 15-6. BYU is going to be picked to win that game, but they're playing at Oklahoma State. And I remember being at Oklahoma State and going there. It's a tough place to play. And I know the coaches will prepare them for that, but these upcoming games against Oklahoma State and against Houston at home, which is obviously going to be a real beast, these are two really big games. Good news, Houston's at home, but this is a week. They sweep this week, that renews everything and gets the confidence. Maybe younger players who's going to step up and make big shots. But it's a big week, and they got to take care of business, obviously, early on, and with Oklahoma State, and that's going to be tough. But playing Houston at home is going to be every bit as tough as well. So this is an opportunity. They go 2-0 this week. Not like the world's going to end and they lose a game. But if they can sweep this game, that gives this team and the coaching staff more confidence and a more togetherness and unity than maybe what they've had in the last couple of games.
Coach, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again next week.
Great being with you guys. Have a good day.
There's Steve Cleveland, former BYU basketball coach, former Fresno State coach. We're back with more in a moment right here on The Zone.